All right. Well, welcome to Healthier and Happier Humans, episode 39. I'm Ashley McGee, and I am very excited to have with me Kristin Barnes. Kristin, thank you so much for joining us, or
You're
me.
welcome. I'm glad to be here. Yeah.
So, just to kick it off, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your background and like your connection to the Navy.
I um, I was number four of five children, and so I needed to find a way to support myself when I turned 18. And so I reached out to a number of colleges and ended up getting selected to the Naval Academy, which has pretty much defined my entire life. So originally I was going to five and dive, and then I ended up flying F-14 and loving it, and I ended up doing a total of 23 years.
Wow. And what class were you at the academy, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm sorry, yeah, in 1992.
All right, well, I have to say go 13 because that's what I was. um,
92 plus 21, I don't, yeah, anyway, that's a long time away from me, but that's okay.
I mean, but that's the great thing about, this community, right? Is like regardless of the year, we can connect and learn from each other, which I think is super fun. Um,
Yeah,
so you, I mean, 23 years, that's a long time to be in.
yeah, but I'll tell you what, it went really fast. It's so funny how time is all perspective, because like I'm going through med school now and I've already been here 4 years and I have another year to go. And like after 3 years, I was like, well, I've already done a tour. It's time for me to go. And so yeah, 23 years went really, really fast.
Do you still feel that like every 3 years, like kind of a little angsty, like, okay, like time to do the next thing?
I do. In fact, I've already moved twice since I moved to Seattle, because I'm like, all right, I've been in this house for 3 years or 2 years, whatever. But it's time to move on. But, uh, I do get itchy feet, which is a little bit of a funny thing because I'm kind of a homebody. But I'm going to have to learn to deal with it. I got to settle down eventually,
Yeah.
maybe.
I feel you. I like in my mind, I think that I want to be like stationary in one place, but then I'm also like, well, what if I do get, kind of, oh, what's the next thing? Once I'm out. But so through your career, can you tell me a little bit like what has your health looked like? Do you have any struggles with your health? What was that like?
So that's a really interesting question, because I've always been into fitness. I've been in organized sports since I was 8. And so I've always been able to eat really poorly and do a lot of things that were not good for me, because exercise is such a beneficial thing for you. I mean, never mind the endorphins and, staving off depression, but it's anti-inflammatory and all the good things that come with working out. And so I really didn't notice I was unhealthy. And I'm sure you've noticed when you go on deployment, the food is horrible. And then you go in the port and you do more things like binge drink that are not, at least some people do, that are not good for you. So I didn't really realize how unhealthy I was until I started getting in my 40s, and I started falling apart. I mean, I'd been introduced to healthier living and I knew about nutrition. I had a master's in nutrition started that I got in 2009. So it's like I know everything that I should be doing, but why am I not doing it? And so heading off to med school, and I need to preface medical school with, it's not an allopathic medical school, it's a naturopathic medical school. It's a little bit different. And then getting into the Chinese medicine has really blown my mind with regards to what is health and how do you achieve it. Because I'm like, whoa, when I first started the program, I was definitely not there. So for now, health just means making it through each day, maybe sleeping well, getting a workout if I can,
Mhm.
not pushing myself too far, and maybe eating a vegetable. That's, there you go. Yeah.
That's fair. I found this recording is taking place during the COVID isolation period, and I found that my like so some days like my form of vegetable is just like I have like some sort of frozen vegetable. I'm just gonna mix it into rice. Like that's close enough. So I feel you, and I think so often in our careers we get into these like survival modes where especially, I mean, you were, you know, in the aviation community. I'm an EDO now, but I was in the SWO community, and the SWO community is like, you know, who's ever suffering the most wins, and you'll sleep when you're dead. And I think we condition ourselves to believe that our own self-care and like mission accomplishment are mutually exclusive. You know what I'm saying?
Even
Um,
more so as women, because women are not allowed to take care of themselves in our culture.
yeah. I would love to hear your thoughts on that because I have a feeling you have opinions.
I might have a one or two. Yeah. You want that right now?
Oh yeah, go for it. Let's do it. I'm excited.
um, so everybody's experience is colored by, or everybody's opinion is colored by the experiences they go through. I grew up Catholic. I grew up in a big family. Grew up with no money in the house. So it's kind of funny, you know, self-care really, that's not anything that ever existed. It was always, you know, you were digging in the garden and mowing the lawn and doing things to help out the family. And if you wanted to do something for yourself, it better be, you know, you're sneaking away with a book or a fishing pole to do your own thing, but that was pretty rare. Um, but I think women are just inculcated from the very beginning that they're the ones that are taking care of everything. And um, until that's done, it's not acceptable for you to take a break, which is just so unfortunate because women burn themselves out. And if you burn yourself out, there's nothing left to give. So I don't get it, you know? I don't know. It just makes no sense to me that you're not allowed to sleep, you're not allowed to eat well, you're not allowed to exercise, you're not allowed to spend time with your female friends. I mean, you are. And a lot of people have freedom to do that, but the message that is in social media and television and all those things is that it's not, and that you're selfish.
Yeah.
I've actually been called selfish before, which I've gotten over, but at the time was super hurtful. It's like, well, so it's selfish for me to try to stay as healthy as I can for as long as I can. You know, that's kind of good for you in the end, but it's a really harsh critique on somebody when they try to do self-care and then turning around and calling them selfish.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then, you know, like as leaders too, right? Like your sailors then see that, and that's how this culture perpetuates. And I feel like another aspect of that too is the military is so masculine, and self-care and taking care of yourselves is, it's seen as, in some ways it's seen as feminine, although I think we all know like the gym bros that like no matter what will always get their lift in. Somehow that's okay, but if we want to go for a run, it's a problem. But I think it exacerbates because so often as women we're kind of not, maybe not outright told, although I have been, and you probably have been too, but at least it's insinuated, if you have feminine traits, if you're doing things that are feminine, then you're weak and you don't belong. Is that something you've experienced as well?
Absolutely. But and I hope it's changing. I know that a lot of the young women that are at the Naval Academy now, I mean, you were just there for God's sake, have described a situation that is far different from when I went through. But if you look at what feminine qualities traditionally are considered, you know, it's nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
It's nurturing. Let's narrow it down to one. And what is nurturing things? It's watering your garden in a proverbial way, which I don't understand why that's exclusively a feminine thing. You can't take care of your sailors as a man. I mean, so what are you calling it if that's not nurturing? You're nurturing future leaders. You're nurturing your sailors to be good people on their own time. So I don't understand why the concept of nurturing is considered feminine and is considered weak, and there's no place for it in the workplace. I'm like, if there's one place that there's room for it, is on a Navy ship, because
Yeah.
when you're stuck at sea for 6 months, every last person on that ship needs a little bit of nurturing.
Yes, absolutely. I remember actually at the end of my first deployment, a YN3 came up to me and he was like, "Ma'am, it seemed like you never had a bad day." And that always just like made things a little bit happier here. And like, of course, he didn't know I was struggling with depression half of the deployment, but that's because junior sailors like shouldn't see that. Um,
Yeah.
but I totally agree. It shows like our interpersonal like relationships make a huge impact on not only like quality of life, but like how well we do our jobs too. Because if we like and respect each other, we tend to work better as a team. Go figure.
This is a loaded thing, because the, and I'm not an expert in culture and society and psychology and all that. This is just my own take on it. The idea of the white conqueror, is somebody who stands out. And so we have been bred from the beginning that in order to be successful, we have to stand out. And that's not what works. It's, like you said, teamwork and getting together, which is actually the most successful thing. But how do you bring that into and I know that we're talking specifically Navy and there's a bigger application, but it's easy for me to talk within those contexts.
Mm-hmm.
That's just never going to be in the Navy sit rep system. You know what I'm saying? They're always going to reward the guy that stands out. And I understand that to a point, but when you look at leaders that are required in the very top of the military establishment, you want people that can bring other people together as a team, not somebody who's going to stand out as a loner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I I can't even count how many times I've seen senior leadership that's like they seem to just exist for the sole purpose of like perpetuating their ego. And I'm like, okay, like A, are you thinking about your sailors? B, like when will logic and reason prevail? um, like let's do the thing that makes the most sense, not the thing that like looks the best for you. Um,
Mm.
yeah. That's I've always said like I never wanted to be an admiral because I feel like it's too political for that reason. Because it just like, I don't know, it's like people put on a star and they forget what it was like to be in the trenches.
It is unfortunate, but perhaps that's one of the good things about the military, is that despite that, it still manages to do really well, because there are so many good people out there
Yeah.
working on a team level, that it still comes together somehow.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I do want to ask you, so I know when we were kind of talking before this, you mentioned that one of the things that you struggled with in your career was mental health. Um,
Mm.
how, how did that kind of come about? How did you become aware of it? And ultimately, how did you, or did you seek help?
So I never knew that anxiety was anxiety until I started medical school. I always just thought I was type A. And okay, there are type A people, but there are also people who are just super anxious.
Mhm.
Um, so I've put a lot of pieces together since in the last 4 years, which has been really wonderful. But at the same time, I'm like, I just missed out on 45 years of really good living, because I had a really bad start in life. And I don't want to get too personal, but I came from a little bit of a chaotic home. We're all very tight now, but just the way circumstances are in the 70s, and living in a very, very small town with not much money, it makes for some interesting situations.
Yeah.
But, you carry that childhood imprint of trauma,
Mhm.
even micro traumas that add up to one trauma down the road. And it affects everything you do, and it affects all your relationships. It affects how you interact in the world. Um, and in my case, and I didn't realize this until recently either, that one of the main symptoms of depression isn't being down, it's being angry. And so I manifested a lot of what I was feeling in anger. when I was at the academy, interestingly, I went down to medical and said, hey, I'm having issues. And I talked to a female captain, Navy captain, and she basically kicked me out of her office. And I think she thought she was doing me a favor. She's like, don't tell anybody we had this conversation, and don't ever say that to anybody ever again, because the stigma on mental health issues, as you know, was so negative. And so from then on, any help I sought was always outside the Navy. And I finally got a professional mental health counselor last year, and I've been working with him. And it's made all the difference. And so one of the things I tell people is that if you're talking to your friends and it's not enough, and you don't have the support you need, you definitely need to find somebody, even if like TRICARE isn't covering my healthcare, which is like, okay, thanks. It's a little upsetting, but if you need help and you're not getting it, you're really doing yourself a disservice, and everybody around you that you love, because you can't connect with them in the way you need to unless you're coming from a whole healthy place.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, that was, I experienced something similar. So on my first tour, I was struggling with depression for about a year, and it was like depression that also topped on top of like an identity crisis, because I was always the like upbeat, happy, positive person. And suddenly I literally felt like I was being followed around by a rain cloud. Like, you see that in cartoons, but like, that's how I felt. It's like, I just want to cry all the time. And so it's like, if I'm not the happy person, then who am I? Like, what purpose do I have? And it got to the point where like, when I finally did go to medical, and I think we were on deployment at this point, Doc looked at me and goes, I don't know how to help you because I feel the same way. I'm like, yeah. Thanks, HMC. That's not helpful. But like thankfully I had a really supportive department head. So I told my department head and I told my chief, because I had a really good relationship with both of them. And they kind of, I think, kept an eye on me. They didn't really know how to help me, but at least I had allies somewhere. But like, I had like 2 full like mental breakdowns on that ship, where like, violent sobbing. Like I laid on the floor with a towel over my face to like calm down. And I'd never broken like that. And I didn't have the tools to cope with it. And I didn't know like where to go. And obviously medical was like, no help. And that's one of the reasons why, I think it's so important to talk about this, because I found the more I've talked about my struggles with mental health, especially with, other women in the military, the more they're like, oh, I've experienced that too. And I thought I was alone. And so I think having these conversations to really work on breaking that stigma and say like, no, like, this is actually way more normal than you think. And there are resources that can help you. And also getting rid of the myths around like, if you seek treatment for depression or anxiety, you'll like lose your clearance. That's not true. But there's so many people, or like in the aviation community, I feel like all aviators are afraid of medical because they don't want to like lose their flight status. Like, I'm married to an aviator. Constantly, I'm like, no, you need to go to medical because you are in your 40s and you need to get this stuff fixed and documented because the VI.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh yeah. I do want to ask, this episode is going to go up in July, but it is being recorded in June, which is Pride Month. I know you've had some experiences around your life and Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and I would love, if you're comfortable, to talk about your experiences in transitioning from like the Don't Ask, Don't Tell era to feeling comfortable to be come out of the closet, and what that was like for you in the military.
I lived such a repressive life that I didn't even realize that I was different until I was 39. My brother came out before me, and I was on deployment. He sent me an email, and I was standing in my room when I read the email, and I actually had to sit down because I'm like, it hit me like a brick wall, like, holy crap, if he's gay, I wonder what that means for me, because I have been dealing with a lot of internal conflict in relationships. And it hit me all at once. And from there, I'm like, and I was married at the time to a man. And so it changed it changed everything at that point, because I can't live fake anymore. And this was 2010. And I was eligible for retirement in 2012. I'm like, well, I can tough it out for 2 years, but then I got to get out, because I can't live hidden in the closet. If this is actually who I'm going to be, I need to do it, and do it openly. Which conveniently enough was the year that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. So I got the opportunity to be at the Naval Academy. I got stationed there in spring of 2012, just as you were leaving second class year, coming back as a firstie.
Yep.
And I was the first OREP for the Spectrum Club.
Oh.
And I remember that summer, the midshipmen were trying to get the group together and get an OREP. And I was sending emails from my previous command in advance, knowing that I'd be up there. And they were all cryptic from my end. I was like, I heard you have a club going and you need some help. And they came back, and the midshipmen were actually chiding me. They're like, you can be open now. It's a thing. I'm like, well, you got to understand that the old people, it's just not this way. So with that said, if it wasn't for the midshipmen at the Naval Academy and the Spectrum Club, I would probably still be far more closeted than I am now. It was really challenging to be the one in the Commandant's meeting. I was the XO of the PE department, so I was a regular representative at that Wednesday meeting, to be the one who also answered questions about those topics. And it was, I just felt like I had this, I don't know, I stood out so much because everybody was looking at me like, oh, you're the one. What do you mean? But we had a big issue with the safe space thing. I don't know if this rings a bell to you or not, but we were trying to do a safe space program, where midshipmen who were questioning, or they needed a place to go where they felt safe to talk or whatever, or from physical violence, had a place to go. And there was a lot of pushback because of course the entire academy is safe. Why do you need a safe space? So it was really uncomfortable to try to show people that their idea of what they thought was real was not. And in the end, I don't know if I changed any minds, but the experience with the midshipman helped change my mind about myself. And that was a really, really wonderful experience to have. And ever since then, it's just like there's been no going back. I mean, I have people now who meet me, they're like, you were married to a man? That's weird. But that said, when I came out, it was like I had to go through puberty all over again. It was so challenging. It's like you have to learn how to relate to people all over again. It's awkward and it's weird, and then people look at you and they don't know why you're being weird. And so you just work your way through those awkward moments all over again. I grew up really fast. I think I might be in my 30s now, even though I'm going on 50. But it was nice in that didn't affect my media career very much. And in fact, in the end, it helped me grow a lot. That was cool.
That's such a cool story. And yeah, I remember actually, it was like there's like a panel of like Navy leadership came. It was like the MCPON. So actually, I think it was across services, but they pulled a male and a female mid from each class. And I think I was a youngster. And I had literally been on like CMOD watch, and they were like, hey, you, what are you doing in 30 minutes? Are you off watch? I'm like, yeah. And so like, that's how I ended up. And I'm sitting in this panel, and they basically asked us, like, what do we think about Don't Ask, Don't Tell? Because it was before it got repealed. And I remember sitting there and going, I mean, I think it will absolutely get repealed and we should be proactive. And it's like all of like the old white dudes, like, let's be honest. It's like all the old white dudes like looked at me like, you don't know it's gonna get repealed. And I'm like, I mean, come on, dude. Like, A, like read the writing on the wall, and B, like, are you really that scared? Like you could just feel the and so I can't even imagine being like the one person in the room in the dance office, like answering all those questions, because there's just so clearly like a huge lack of understanding. And I think and I hope there's been a lot of growth in the military since then. But, you know, as far as like trans inclusion, like we with the back and forth of that, like we have so much further to go still there. And it's interesting. I can relate a lot to your kind of discovery, because turns out once I got married to my husband, who I love and adore, I realized I'm bi. Which is fine. And like he knows, like we've talked about it. But it's something where like I'm kind of figuring out like, what does that mean for me? And I don't know. So it's kind of like, this is, you know, this year in 2020 is the first Pride Month where I'm like, I can be a part of this. Like, which is,
you could always be a part of it.
I know, it's like such a weird mental thing. But like, I don't know, like there's a different feeling between like being an ally and an advocate versus like feeling like a part of the club.
Having the experience, yeah, totally get that.
Yeah. So, and this is the first time I have talked about this in like a public forum. So, yeah, things are happening.
It can be scary. It can be scary to talk about, for sure.
Yeah. But again, I think it goes back to being open and breaking down stigma. And you know, the more we have, I think more than ever right now, we're learning the more we have those uncomfortable, difficult conversations, the more opportunity we have for growth and for change. Yeah. Oh man, I'm like, I have all the adrenaline right now. It's great. Okay. So I do want to like now talk a little bit about your experience in med school so far.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. So, and you're, you know, in my Facebook group, and you've like already blown my mind a few times of like, by the way, in Oriental medicine, pears. I'm like, what? Um, so I'm curious, like, just from the get-go, like, what has been the biggest, like, if you can even like narrow down to one, but like what have been like the biggest kind of like ahas or like kind of mind-blowing moments for you in, you know, obviously being so indoctrinated in Western medicine, and now you're learning this entirely different approach to health and wellness?
I think the thing that blows my mind the most, and this is true whether it's Western medicine for those who want to admit it, and for Eastern medicine, is how important your emotional outlook and your emotional health is to your physical health. And I've always kind of had an idea, because I've always been into esoterics and the spiritual connection with the body and how that manifests. And that's why I push counseling so much, is because if you're not mentally, emotionally healthy, you will never be fully physically healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So putting that together in a way that I can verbalize, both in terms of Western medicine and Eastern medicine, because Eastern medicine, we talk about liver qi stagnation and heart kidney disconnect and all kinds of weird things. In Western medicine, they just, you know, say, well, you're dealing with depression and anger, and we need to get to the bottom of that. That link is how I plan on focusing my practice, no matter what it is. If the patient comes in and they want primary care from a Western perspective, or they come in and they say, I want acupuncture and I don't want anything else but acupuncture, it still starts with the heart, like the emotional heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think that is such a like core piece that like we really overlook, right? And I mean, the names of everything just sound so much nicer. It's like, oh, like this is like, I don't know, like there's a part of me where like as soon as you start talking about like Archie and like centered, and I'm like, oh yeah, like that like it just feels good like sitting with it. Like it like makes sense physically. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making sense.
I had this conversation with a supervisor of mine who was also both an ND and an acupuncturist, and she's kind of a mentor of mine, but I was talking to her, and we kind of came to the agreement that, yeah, it's a story I can understand. You know, we all understand the Western perspective, this is what we've grown up with, but when you hear the Eastern perspective, and when I say Eastern, I mean not just Chinese medicine, but Japanese medicine, Korean medicine, Ayurvedic, Tibetan medicine, it's a story almost. And the other cool thing is it's so multi-layered, because medicine from the Chinese perspective is based on philosophy, and you get into acupuncture and herbs, and it's not medicine the way we separate it. It's medicine on the basis of philosophy, and it's like I can do this. This works for me. Yeah. So I can see myself being more of an acupuncturist and a practitioner of Chinese medicine than Western medicine any day.
Nice. I might need to take a trip to Seattle because they canceled all my acupuncture appointments because of COVID. And my shoulders hurt. I typical like thanks academy, right? I have scar tissue in my shoulder from I don't know, something I did at the academy, I don't even know. So like been doing like acupuncture on my shoulder to like help with that. And I'm feeling it, not doing it for 6 months now, I think is yeah. Yep.
Totally.
But that I love that. And so I'm curious because I know there's always like the skeptics out there. I find this when I talk about meditation and people are like, oh, that's so hippy dippy, right? But like we know like science and data supports that like these things actually work. So how do you kind of approach that skeptical viewpoint?
We have this conversation, what seems like every day, because especially when it comes to strange modalities like homeopathy, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but everybody says homeopathy is hocus pocus. And I'm like, no, wait. We can't prove it yet. And one of the reasons we can't prove it is because homeopathy is so complicated, and I think works on a level that we can't measure yet. So, you know, when plain film first came out, everybody was like, oh my God, that's magic. You know, and then when a CT scan came out, everybody was like, oh my God, that's magic. We have the Hubble telescope that can look, you know, just hundreds and thousands of light years into space, and that's okay, but somehow sticking a needle in a specific point is hocus pocus and it's fake. Like, are you kidding me? Oh, come on. With that said, it would be nice to see more research supporting it, but in the end, I think one of the things I love about Chinese medicine is they don't apologize for it. They've been doing it for 3,000 or 4,000 years. There's evidence that goes back even further, and you can't tell me that a system of medicine that doesn't work would last for 3,000 years. So it gets the check in the box for works for me. If somebody doesn't want to do it because they don't believe it works, that's fine. There's plenty of people in the world who are going to be customers or clients that I don't need to worry about it too much. But if you do want a Western perspective on Chinese medicine, one of the best books I've ever read is called A Spark in the Machine. It's a British doctor who is also an acupuncturist who talks about how the Chinese medical system lines up perfectly with embryology. It's a fascinating read, and it's a read that just a layperson would understand. You don't need to understand embryology because he kind of walks you through it. But after I read that, I'm like, it's genius. It's just pure genius.
Oh, I'm excited. I just wrote it down. I have a running list of like health books. So I try to get through one a month, which happens sometimes. It depends on the length of the book, I think. No, but that's fascinating. I'm curious. I know that like in Western medicine, women a lot are overlooked, right? Like a lot of studies, kind of like so much medicine is like they don't include women because like apparently periods are hard. Um, so I'm curious, have you found in Eastern medicine of like a better like kind of intersection and inclusion when it comes to health for women?
When I answer this, understand that my perspective is of as an American doing the Chinese medical system.
Of course.
And I have traveled in China, but not nearly enough to understand how it actually works over there.
Mm-hmm.
But from my perspective, in the education that I've received at my school, it is very inclusive. In fact, there are entire businesses that are built simply on women's health.
Mm-hmm.
And Chinese medicine is very effective at addressing a lot of those because it addresses the heart, among many other things. But what am I trying to say? It makes me feel good about going out and being able to impact people who need it because the system exists and is there and can treat them.
I love that. I think I can hear in your voice you have so much hope and like and I think that that's so powerful. So the last thing I want to kind of touch on, is do you have any advice for women that are either still active duty or veterans that are either struggling with their mental or physical health, or even just like their mindset in general?
Okay, so point number one, I think would be you don't have to feel good all the time. And I think it's important to give yourself permission to feel bad sometimes. You're allowed to be in bad moods. It happens. Everybody has them.
Mm-hmm.
The second part of that would be mindful enough to know when you've gone over the point of, okay, and now you need help. And to ask for help when you need it. Because too many people don't do that. And then the last thing I would say, it seems obvious and a lot of people understand it already, but some people don't, is you always have to come at the world as yourself. Because when you try to be something that somebody else wants you try to be what your dad wants you to be, or you try to be what you think your friends think, you think they want you to be, or you try to be different to fit in. That just doesn't work. Being a genuine person can be really tough, but it was one of the most rewarding things I ever found as a leader, that if I did that, people responded.
I love that.
Yeah. And sometimes just saying, dude, I don't know, let's find out, is worth its weight in gold, if saying words can weigh anything. But I have found that people respond really well to that too, because if you don't know the answer, then dang it, you just don't know it. And maybe you ought to just say it. Although that isn't necessarily very popular sometimes, because as a leader, we're supposed to know everything, but man, you can't know everything.
No.
This is why you surround yourself with good people. But I don't know. Let's look it up and see what happens.
I love that. Oh, I think those are great parting words to kind of wrap this up. So, kind of closing things down, where, if people want to find you, learn more about you, like, are you on social media? Like, where can people find you?
I am on social media under my name on a limited basis. Interestingly, I am on Twitter, but I'm under a code name, if you will. I wrote a children's book back in 2012 about a turtle named Jesus, Haysos, which is all about learning how to be yourself, interestingly enough. But so I'm on Twitter as, I'm sorry, Instagram is Jesus. But for now, I'm just in Seattle trying to finish school before I get out in the world, try to earn money again.
Well, I know you have some big plans for, your practice moving forward and, like once you finish school. And I'm very happy that you're in our Healthy Women Warriors Facebook group. So anyone that's watching this that isn't in that group, that is a female veteran or active duty, I hope they join, because I love it. You like swoop in and just like drop knowledge, and I'm like, yes, that's what I want here. So I'm excited to see. I'm just like excited to see the continuation of your journey and to continue learning from you. This has been such a fun conversation. I really appreciate you being here.
Well, I appreciate that, and just so you know, it is a two-way street. A lot of my mentors are younger than me, as strange as that sounds, and I think we can always learn something from people, no matter how young they are, because age doesn't mean wisdom. And sometimes 2-year-olds can give us the greatest wisdom we need anyway. But I appreciate that we've connected. This has been fun.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kristin. And for folks listening or watching, watching wherever you find this, until next time, please go out and live your healthiest and most abundant life. And we'll talk again soon.